The rain fell in sheets that night, washing away footprints and evidence alike. But some things can't be erased by water, like the bond that forms when two strangers' lives collide in the most unexpected way. What happened when Mike Donovan, a struggling single father, found Officer Sarah Chen bleeding out in an alleyway behind his apartment building? The answer would change not just their lives, but an entire police department forever. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more incredible true stories of human connection that remind us what really matters in life. Mike Donovan was taking out the trash when he heard it, a faint groan coming from behind the dumpster. At first, he thought it might be one of the neighborhood strays, but something in the sound made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. It was too human, too desperate. "Hello?" he called out, clutching his phone in his pocket, ready to dial 911. "Is someone there?" The rain was coming down hard now, soaking through his thin jacket. He should have gone back inside, should have called for help from the safety of his apartment where his 8-year-old daughter Emma was sleeping. But that sound, that pained, human sound, pulled him forward. When he rounded the corner of the dumpster, his heart nearly stopped. A woman in a police uniform lay crumpled against the brick wall, one hand pressed to her side where dark blood seeped between her fingers, mixing with rainwater in a pink stream toward the drain. "Oh my God," Mike whispered, dropping to his knees beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, deep brown eyes filled with pain and something else. Fear. "Radio," she managed to say, her voice barely audible above the rain. "They took my radio. My gun." Mike was already dialing 911, his fingers slipping on the wet screen. "I need an ambulance," he told the dispatcher, his voice steadier than he felt. "There's an officer down in the alley behind Parkview Apartments on 8th Street. The woman, Officer Sarah Chen, according to the nameplate on her uniform, was losing consciousness." Mike pressed his hand over hers, trying to stem the bleeding. "Stay with me, officer," he urged. "Help is coming. Just stay with me." Her eyes locked with his, and in that moment, something passed between them, a connection, a promise. Then her eyes closed. Mike didn't know it then, but this chance encounter in the rain would set in motion events that would expose corruption at the highest levels of the police department, test the limits of his courage, and ultimately, give both him and Sarah a second chance at the family neither thought they'd ever have. ******. 3 days earlier, Officer Sarah Chen had been sitting in Captain Reynolds' office, her back straight, her expression carefully neutral as he explained why she was being passed over for detective again. "Your work is exemplary, Chen," Reynolds said, not quite meeting her eyes. "But the timing just isn't right. Maybe next year." It was the third time she'd heard those words. 3 years of outstanding performance reviews, successful cases, and commendations from the community. 3 years of watching less qualified officers, all men, move up the ranks ahead of her. "With all due respect, sir," Sarah said, keeping her voice level, "my record speaks for itself. I've closed more cases than any other officer in my division. The Community Trust initiative I started has become a model for other precincts. What exactly is the problem with my timing?" Reynolds shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Look, Chen, this isn't personal. There are politics involved. Considerations beyond your control. Because I'm a woman? Or because I'm Asian American?" The captain's face hardened. "That's out of line, officer. This conversation is over." Sarah stood, her hands trembling slightly with suppressed anger. "Yes, sir. Thank you for your time." As she turned to leave, Reynolds added, "And Chen? I'd advise you to be careful about making accusations you can't back up. It could damage your career." The threat was thinly veiled, but Sarah understood it perfectly. "Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Accept your place." But Sarah Chen had never been good at staying in her place. It was why she'd become a cop in the first place, to change the system from within. Her father, a first-generation immigrant from Taiwan, had taught her that justice wasn't always given freely, sometimes you had to fight for it. And fight she would. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Mike Donovan hadn't planned on being a single father. He and Melissa had been college sweethearts, had planned their life together carefully. Emma had been their miracle after years of trying. But then came the diagnosis, aggressive breast cancer, and 18 months later, Mike was alone with a 4-year-old daughter who kept asking when mommy was coming home. 4 years later, he was still figuring it out day by day. His job as a high school English teacher paid the bills, but just barely. The apartment in the Parkview complex wasn't much, but it was close to Emma's school and his work. They made do. "Daddy, can we have pancakes for dinner?" Emma asked that evening, looking up from her homework at the kitchen table. Mike smiled, ruffling her dark curls, so like her mother's. "Again? We had breakfast for dinner yesterday." "But pancakes are the best food in the universe," Emma declared with the absolute certainty only an 8-year-old could muster. "How about a compromise? Pancakes tomorrow morning, and tonight we have." Mike opened the refrigerator, surveying their limited options. "Spaghetti?" Emma considered this, her small face serious. "Deal. But with extra cheese." "Extra cheese it is." These small negotiations, these moments of normalcy, they were what kept Mike going on the hardest days. Emma was his world, his reason for getting up each morning and pushing through the grief that still ambushed him at unexpected moments. Later, after Emma was tucked in bed with her favorite stuffed elephant, Mike sat at the kitchen table grading papers. The rain had started, pattering against the windows in a soothing rhythm. He was just thinking about calling it a night when he remembered the trash needed to go out. He never could have imagined that taking out the garbage would change his life forever. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The ambulance arrived in minutes, though to Mike it felt like hours. The paramedics worked quickly, efficiently, loading Officer Chen onto a stretcher. One of them, a young woman with kind eyes, touched Mike's arm. "You did good," she said. "Kept pressure on the wound. She's lost a lot of blood, but she's stable for now." Mike nodded, suddenly aware that he was soaked to the skin, his hands stained with the officer's blood. "Will she be okay?" "They'll do everything they can," the paramedic said, which wasn't really an answer. As they loaded Sarah into the ambulance, more police cars arrived, their lights painting the rain-slicked alley in flashes of red and blue. Mike found himself surrounded by officers, answering the same questions over and over. "No, I didn't see who shot her." "No, I didn't hear anything before I found her." "Yes, she was conscious briefly. She said someone took her radio and gun." A detective, Ramirez, according to the badge he flashed, pulled Mike aside. "We appreciate your help, Mr. Donovan. Not everyone would stop to help these days." Mike shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done the same. Ramirez's expression suggested he didn't agree. "Officer Chen is one of our best. If you hadn't found her when you did." He let the sentence hang unfinished. "We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow to make a formal statement." "Of course," Mike said. "Whatever I can do to help." As the police began to disperse, Mike headed back to his apartment, his mind racing. Who would shoot a police officer and leave her to die in an alley? Was it random violence, or something more targeted? He opened his apartment door quietly, checking on Emma, who was still sound asleep, blissfully unaware of the drama that had unfolded just outside their building. Mike showered, watching the pink-tinged water swirl down the drain, trying to wash away the image of Officer Chen's pale face and the feel of her blood on his hands. Sleep didn't come easily that night. When it did, Mike dreamed of rain and blood and brown eyes filled with fear. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Sarah Chen woke to the steady beep of hospital monitors and the dull throb of pain in her side. For a moment, she couldn't remember what had happened or how she'd gotten there. Then it all came rushing back, the investigation, the files she discovered, the ambush in the alley. And the man who had found her. Who was he? She had a vague memory of kind eyes, a steady voice telling her to hold on. A nurse entered the room, smiling when she saw Sarah was awake. "Welcome back, Officer Chen. You gave everyone quite a scare." Sarah tried to speak, but her throat was dry. The nurse helped her sip some water. "How long have I been here?" Sarah asked, her voice raspy. "Just over 24 hours. The doctor will want to check on you now that you're awake, but you're doing remarkably well for someone who took a bullet to the abdomen." 24 hours. Sarah felt a spike of panic. The files she discovered, the evidence of corruption within the department, it was hidden in her apartment. If the wrong people found it before she could get it to internal affairs. "My phone," Sarah said urgently. "I need my phone." The nurse looked sympathetic but firm. "All your personal effects are with the police. Department protocol for officer-involved shootings. But I can let them know you're awake. I'm sure they'll want to talk to you." Sarah sank back against the pillows, trying to think. Who could she trust? Not Reynolds, certainly. Maybe Ramirez? He'd always seemed straight, but these days she wasn't sure about anyone. The door opened again, and Captain Reynolds himself walked in, his face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Chen," he said, approaching the bed. "Thank God you're all right. The whole department's been worried sick." Sarah doubted that very much. "What happened to the man who found me? Is he okay?" Reynolds nodded. "Mike Donovan. High school teacher, single father. He's fine. Gave his statement this morning." "I'd like to thank him," Sarah said. "All in good time. First, we need to talk about what happened. Do you remember anything about your attacker?" Sarah hesitated. The truth was, she remembered everything, including the fact that her attacker had been wearing a police uniform. But until she knew who she could trust, she needed to play this carefully. "It's all a blur," she lied. "I was doing my patrol, checking the alley because of recent break-ins in the area. Someone came up behind me. I didn't see their face." Reynolds studied her, and Sarah had the uncomfortable feeling he knew she was holding back. "Well, don't worry. We'll find whoever did this. The whole force is on it." That was exactly what Sarah was afraid of. After Reynolds left, Sarah lay back, her mind working overtime despite the pain medication flowing through her system. She needed to get to her apartment, secure the evidence. But how? She was in no condition to leave the hospital, and she didn't know who she could trust to help her. Except, perhaps, the civilian who had saved her life. Mike Donovan. A high school teacher with no connection to the police department. No reason to be involved in the corruption she'd uncovered. It was a risk, asking a stranger for help. But right now, a stranger might be the only person she could trust. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Mike sat in the police station, feeling out of place among the officers bustling about. He'd given his statement to Detective Ramirez, describing again how he'd found Officer Chen in the alley. Now he was waiting for, what, exactly? He wasn't sure, but Ramirez had asked him to stay a bit longer. "Mr. Donovan?" Mike looked up to see a uniformed officer standing before him. "Yes? I'm Officer Jackson. Detective Ramirez asked me to give you a ride home." Mike stood, confused. "That's not necessary. I can take the bus." Jackson smiled, but there was something off about it. "It's no trouble. Department wants to show its appreciation for what you did for one of our own." Something about the officer's tone made Mike uneasy, but he couldn't put his finger on why. He was being paranoid, surely. The events of the previous night had left him on edge. "All right, thank you," Mike said, following Jackson out to a patrol car. The ride was mostly silent, Jackson making only perfunctory small talk about the weather and traffic. As they neared Mike's apartment building, the officer cleared his throat. "So, Officer Chen, did she say anything to you? Before the ambulance came, I mean." Mike glanced at him, that uneasy feeling returning. "Just what I told Detective Ramirez. She said someone took her radio and gun. Nothing else? About what she was doing in that alley, maybe?" "No, nothing like that. She was barely conscious." Jackson nodded, pulling up in front of the Parkview apartments. "Well, thanks again for what you did. Not everyone would get involved these days." "So people keep telling me," Mike said, getting out of the car. "Have a good day, officer." As Mike walked into his building, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something strange about Jackson's questions. Why would Chen have told him what she was doing in the alley? And why did it matter? Mike pushed the thoughts aside as he entered his apartment. Emma would be home from school soon, and he needed to prepare dinner. Normal life had to go on, despite the surreal events of the previous night. He was chopping vegetables when his phone rang, an unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Donovan?" The voice was female, slightly raspy. "This is Officer Sarah Chen. I believe you saved my life last night." Mike nearly dropped the phone. "Officer Chen. How are you? Are you okay?" "I've been better," she said with a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "But I'm alive, thanks to you. The doctors say if you hadn't found me when you did." "I'm just glad I was there," Mike said, meaning it. There was a pause, then Chen spoke again, her voice lower. "Mr. Donovan, I know this is going to sound strange, but I need your help. I can't explain everything over the phone, but I'm in trouble. The kind that goes beyond getting shot." Mike's uneasiness from earlier returned, stronger now. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where I don't know who I can trust in my own department," she said. "I need someone to go to my apartment and get something for me. Something important. I wouldn't ask, but there's no one else I can turn to right now." Mike hesitated. He had Emma to think about. Getting involved in whatever Chen was mixed up in could put his daughter at risk. But the officer had nearly died in his arms. He couldn't just turn his back on her. "What do you need me to do?" he asked finally. Chen's relief was audible. "Thank you. I need you to go to my apartment. There's a key hidden in the planter by the door. Inside, in my bedroom closet, there's a lockbox. The combination is 7-2-9-4. Inside are some files and a flash drive. I need you to bring them to me at the hospital." "When?" "As soon as possible. Tonight, if you can. And Mr. Donovan? Please don't tell anyone about this. Not the police, not anyone. It's important." The urgency in her voice convinced him more than her words. "I understand. I'll come tonight, after my daughter is asleep. My neighbor can watch her." "Thank you," Chen said again. "I know this is a lot to ask of a stranger." "We're not exactly strangers," Mike said. "Not after last night." After Chen gave him her address and they ended the call, Mike stood in his kitchen, wondering what he'd just gotten himself into. Whatever it was, he had a feeling it was much bigger, and more dangerous, than he could imagine. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Sarah hung up the hospital phone, her heart racing. She'd just put a civilian, a single father, in potential danger. But what choice did she have? The evidence she'd gathered implicated several high-ranking officers in a protection racket that had been operating for years. If that evidence disappeared, so would any chance of bringing them to justice. And if they discovered she had the evidence? Well, she'd already seen what they were willing to do to protect themselves. A nurse came in to check her vitals, chatting pleasantly about the flowers that had been delivered from the police department. Sarah smiled and nodded, all the while wondering which of her colleagues had tried to kill her in that alley. After the nurse left, Sarah tried to rest, but her mind kept returning to Mike Donovan. There had been something in his voice, a steadiness, a reliability that reassured her. She hoped she wasn't making a mistake by trusting him. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, the room was darker and someone